60 Minutes with Angela starts right now.
My host today says, probe Arik Air, bring back the firing squad and make Nigeria great again. Well, hello and welcome to the program. I'm Angela Ajetumobi. And so I've been following his post on social media. He had cause to complain when Ethiopian Airlines had landed a brand new Airbus A350-900 at Abuja Airport. And then listen to what he says. Meanwhile, we have not even got a spanner for a tire. Shameful people. End of quote. Who's he referring to as shameful people, and why are they shameful? Well, Anthony OMOKHODION, immigration law advisor in the United Kingdom, joins me today on 60 Minutes with Angela. Well, thank you, Mr. OMOKHODION, for coming back on 60 Minutes with me today.
Thank you for having me.
And I saw you giggling when I said, bring back the firing squad. We'll get to that question of the death penalty.
Yes.
But you know, reading you, especially on this Arik Air matter, you have been relentless on that matter in the past few months. You've even gone as far as calling it a criminal enterprise.
Exactly.
And you've also called the action of AMCON, that's the asset management company of Nigeria, in rescuing Arik. You say they are complicit in that criminality.
Yes.
How do you justify that?
I think the starting point is to look at Arik Air and determine how did it come about. In simple terms, Arik was born a giant. Nobody is born a giant. And therefore, the issues arise. Who were the drivers behind Arik Air? How did they get the funding to start Arik Air? If they funded it with good money, legitimate money, how did they let it run to the ground the way it has? If AMCON is part of the rescue mission for Arik, and AMCON doesn't know, as they have admitted, what they are dealing with, what rescue they've taken on, it's your money and my money. So as far as I am concerned, they are complicit in taking our money and putting behind an outfit to which they know nothing about. Now, they will say they do, I will say they don't. And if we look at the press, they tell you, we don't know how much they owe. They need to tell us, where are the books and records of Arik Air? Why is it Arik Air doesn't have these books and records? And how AMCON is then taking more money and giving to people like KPMG to do an audit. An audit of what? What is the expected or the desired result? And if there's any truth in the fact that they want to turn Arik Air around or into a national carrier, then the question should be, was there an option? Was there an option to shut it down and start another airline from ground zero? Did it have to be Arik? And if I run my business into the ground, AMCON isn't going to come and bail me out. The federal government is not going to come and bail me out. Why are we bailing Arik Air out?
What about the point that Arik makes? And I want to get this quotation right. The receiver manager, Oluseyi Opasonya, at the February 9 joint press conference of Arik and AMCON, he says, AMCON has been a creditor to Arik for some time. It also has security over substantial parts of the assets of Arik. The debt of Arik to AMCON has not been paid and huge sums are owed. We have come to supervise the operations, sustain the operations, improve services, and ensure that we support Arik. Many Nigerians draw their livelihood from there. And the desire of AMCON is to keep this airline flying. I mean, isn't that a good enough reason for them to intervene?
There are serious presuppositions that we must keep Arik flying. I ask the question why. I'm not against the 2,000 people who work there to have a job.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be Arik. I'm saying if AMCON was part of Arik,
yes,
when Arik ran into such troubled waters, then AMCON is part of the problem. The solution might not be Arik. I'm not saying it's not. I'm
yes,
simply saying give us the data, give us the stats, and let's make that decision. Don't presuppose. And
yes,
that's what is being said here.
Your father used to be the commercial director of Nigeria Airways.
Let me stop you right there.
Right.
He wasn't the commercial director of Nigeria Airways.
Okay.
He rose through many ranks and retired as the deputy director of field services of Nigeria Airways. He then went on to join Okada Airlines as deputy chairman operations. He was in charge of the operations of Okada Air.
You know, you're coming from a point of knowledge. At least I know you spent many years driving him to work and back and listening to all the things he says. What do you say to those who think that you just sound a little nostalgic about Nigeria Airways back in the day?
All right. Yes, I've heard that accusation, and I think it's an incorrect accusation. What is the nostalgia? That we should have a national airline? That we should have a Nigeria Airways in any format? Is that nostalgic? I don't think so. I think that's a real aspiration. And why do you shut down Nigeria Airways, whatever problems it might have, and in a clandestine manner, we come back to that word,
yes,
transfer or sell or abrogate to a new enterprise called Arik all the asset base of Nigeria Airways?
yes.
The 6,000 people that were working for Nigeria Airways up until today are still struggling to get their pension. But you were able to take all those assets and give to another airline, complete with another $500 million to start up. That's not nostalgia. That's dealing with the reality. We have been defrauded. And my words are strong, and I'm not
yes,
running away from them.
Yes.
The nation has been defrauded. The people who put their backs into Nigeria Airways have been defrauded for the sole interest of a couple of people and a particular group. That's not right. That's anti-Nigerian, and it's anti-you, it's anti-me, and it's anti-our viewers here today.
I want to take you back to the first statement you made. Arik was born big.
Giant.
Giant. What's wrong with being born a giant? People will say, well, you know, if they had the funds available to them, why not start big?
I would argue that that's not a natural birth. Nobody and no circumstance is born a giant. You are born, we know you are going to be born. So if you take a physical example of a baby being born,
yes,
there is 9 months before the baby is born. There's a reason for it. It gets you ready, it gets me ready, it gets us ready.
Yes.
There are things we have to do. We have to paint the room and think, do we move house? Who's going to come and look after the baby? Who stays at home to look?
Yes.
Do I go to work? Do you work part-time? There are logistical issues before the baby is born. The baby then gets born and we have all that growth time. And then now we can let the baby walk on the streets alone. There's no baby that is born a giant, not even giants. They grow, they may be born big,
yes,
and they grow into a giant later. Arik was born as a full-fledged airline from ground zero. We shut down Nigeria Airways very acrimoniously, and next thing we have Arik. And Arik has all this money I'm talking about. Little questions should be asked. Well, where did that money come from? And if it isn't good money, if it isn't clean money, then there's going to be a tendency to abuse.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what happened. There were no plans, there was no public support, there was no call for public paper, there was nothing. It was just a baby born and born a giant. Those teething problems were not experienced. That is why we have the problem we have today.
Listening to you, it would seem as if it was a faulty foundation.
Criminal foundation.
Criminal. These are strong words,
Right.
Mr. OMOKHODION. And you're not backing down from them.
Well, I've said it.
Yes.
And there are two consequences. One, those who are charged with criminality should now stand up and say, well, we are not. These are the facts.
Yes.
Or shoot.
All right. I want to read to you something that, in course of researching for this, I read on BBC's website, Martin Patience, who wrote about this Arik matter when in February, Thursday, 9th of February 2017, when it was reported that the Nigerian government had taken over what they called its biggest airline to prevent it going bust. And the reason given then was to instill sanity in the country's aviation sector and to prevent a major catastrophe. I thought, why not?
If those points were genuine, I would say yes. I say to you, if the owners of Arik have
Yes.
run their airline into the ground, it's their airline. Why should I and you be concerned? If the Nigerian government genuinely believes that there should be an option, there should be a national carrier, make one, create one, tell us, take us along. I haven't got a problem with that.
Yeah.
I haven't got a problem with the principle of having a good airline in Nigeria. What I have a problem with is taking one that is without doubt in deep problem.
Yes.
We have no knowledge of the depth of that problem, and then we just start to write guarantees. We can't do that. We need to know what we've taken over.
Yes.
We need to be able to assess it and analyze it and decide this is good for us or not.
Yes.
If, for example, today we need 350 million or billion or whatever the figure to bail out Arik, shouldn't there be a counter argument? Shouldn't there be a counter discussion? Shouldn't we be saying, all right, we need to spend 350 billion or whatever
on this? Yeah.
Is there an option? Could we do something else? Can we take all those workers from Arik and put them into a brand new airline? Is there an option? I haven't heard one so far.
Does it appear to you to be that Arik is a de facto national airline?
It would seem so. I will be magnanimous to AMCON and to the current MD, and I will say we're still awaiting the KPMG audit.
Right.
And that would seem to determine the direction we're going to go. I will say here that my understanding is that Ethiopian Airlines is pushing the federal government to make a decision on Arik, and the decision they want is to effectively shut down Arik so they, Ethiopian, can fly the skies. That brings me to another level of criminality that should never be allowed in this country.
What level of criminality is that?
Well, Ethiopian is funded by Arab money. So if we allow the Ethiopians to run the African skies, that means the Arabs are running the African skies.
Yes.
Which is their game plan. They've done it with Emirates, they've done it with Qatar, they've done it with
Etihad.
And that's their plan. That is their plan, to run riot over the African skies. We've let British Airways do it, we've let Air France do it, we've let the Americans do it, and now we have the Arabs coming to do it for us. Look, at what point are we going to say no? Enough is enough. I argue it's now.
Martin Patience says, in justifying, in saying why the federal government was justified in taking over Arik, says customer care was zilch. When a flight is cancelled, ground staff take off. And by the end of 2016, 70% of international flights by Arik were delayed. And I'm quoting him now, the firm's staff bear the brunt for an airline that even by Nigerian standards is a byword for utter dysfunction.
Those are nice words.
You mean
Utter dysfunction.
Yes.
We have a calamity on our hands. We have an airline with an ethos of zero service. I flew on an Arik aircraft, must be 6 months now, and the flight was virtually empty. I had a word with one of the top directors of Arik at the time. He's no longer in this country.
Yes.
English guy. And I pointed out to him that flight was empty. And his response to me was, oh, we do that sometimes. Now, how and why, if you are the dominant carrier in Nigeria,
yes,
should you have an aircraft that is empty? And when it is pointed out to you
say you do that
you
sometimes.
say you do that sometimes. And yet, 30 days later, he's going to expect a salary in foreign exchange. Everything is wrong with that statement. Everything in that statement shows the psyche of the enterprise, Arik Air. Arik Air is again a criminal enterprise. By coming out of criminality, by being born of criminality,
yes,
their mentality was wrong. They didn't get it right. This is not an airline that was born out of research and feasibility, that there were plans and actions to be taken when things didn't happen.
There was a vision?
No, there wasn't. Arik, if you think about their position in the aviation sector in Nigeria, quite rightly, perhaps the #1 airline in Africa, privately owned and plus. Arik shouldn't be in a position where its flights from Europe or America were empty. They dominate on the West Coast. They dominate in Nigeria. They didn't even have to be worrying about bringing traffic to Nigeria.
Yes.
They had enough capacity to take the traffic to the outlying regions. Arik could have flown with 0 passengers from Nigeria and still been a successful airline. Arik had no business being delayed. They had no business not having spare tires, which is what we're now hearing, that they had no storage, no capacity. So if you haven't got a spare tire in your car,
yes,
and you're driving on the 3rd mainland bridge and you're one of those 4 blows,
yes,
the consequences, you now have to wait for somebody from somewhere to bring you a tire and bail you out before you can continue on your journey. If you had a spare tire, that same incident would have cost you 10, 20 minutes and you would have continued. Now you're talking about 4, 5, 6 hours of complete and total dislocation to your travel. Now, to run an airline like that, with that mindset, some people need to be shot. It's like that.
Join us again after the break. So what is 60 Minutes with Angela all about? It's not an interview. I like to think it's a conversation between two people making the news, people who are in the news, and those who become the news. And the whole idea is to inform, to educate, or to clarify, as the case may be. It is an art getting people to answer the questions that everyone is thinking in their minds. And that's what we try to do on 60 Minutes with Angela. I ask all the questions that everyone's thinking about and no one wants to voice. All the questions you always wanted to ask, you get those answers on 60 Minutes with Angela. Every week on this station, 60 Minutes with Angela, getting answers to every question you always wanted to ask. Welcome back. If you've just joined me, it's 60 Minutes with me, Angela Ajetomobi. On my hot seat today, immigration lawyer Anthony OMOKHODION. So why do you think Arik ended up the way it did? Who is responsible for making sure that an airline has spare tires? For instance, if an airline is traveling around, we're only being told now that even spare tires they didn't have. Whose responsibility is that within the aviation sector?
Right. Another can of worms. We have different agencies that supervise airlines, financially, operationally, training, the airports, different agencies. All of them have been complicit in the problem of Arik. Arik was so big, it was such a bully, that there were people who shut their eyes at things happening at Arik when they ought to have been making a loud noise or stopping the operations if they could. I hear that Arik owes the tax authorities zillions of money. This is money it has collected from passengers, like your sales tax, and it's only a transit. It should be remitting that money direct to the tax authorities. It hasn't done that. Whose job is that? To have ensured that
They
continued. I'm talking about big funds. I'm not going to quote figures, but I'm just going to simply say to you, even if Arik ran into trouble, somebody in the tax authority or the appropriate department of NAA or whatever ought to have gone there and said, right, we'll do a daily collection. Because you can't manage the situation, guess what we're going to do? We're going to have one of our staff sit at every counter.
At the counter
yes,
there
and collect our money at source. To not do that is negligent. When I use the word criminal, I've not done it lightly. And I understand the consequences of accusing a national body of criminality. I understand it. Well, from my legal position, I should. But I do. Somebody should have said, you are in trouble. We can't afford to allow you shut down, but we can't also not be paid. So let's find an answer that works for you and works for us. We'll stand at the counter and collect our money. Nobody did it. We ought to have our airlines give financial reports every so often. It may be monthly, which is what it is. It may be quarterly, it may be half yearly, it may be yearly. I understand that Arik don't have records since 2015. We're in 2017. If that is correct, in any country in the world, even the company's house, CAC we call them here, ought to have been asking, where are these records? How come you haven't filed your annual returns? Who is who? Who is earning what? You are running into danger if you continue to spend money like this vis-a-vis your earnings. Who is giving this advice? If AMCON was the supervising body because they owed AMCON, how come AMCON let it get to this depraved level? And again, another strong word, depraved. How come they allowed it to get to this level? Where was AMCON? Where was NAA? Where was FAN? The people who gave AMCON the aeroplanes, are they complicit? Did they know AMCON was not in trouble and still allowed AMCON to rack up huge debts in lease charges? Where did the system fail? I argue that Arik represents the problem with Nigeria. And this is why I say probe Arik. We need to take it, slice it, dice it, chop it up, and look at the component parts. And it throw up the kind of answers to the questions you're asking me. We need to do it because it represents the problem with Nigeria. All of a sudden, who is the bad guy? Who did what? Or who did not do what he ought to have done? And until we slice Arik up and dice it and see for truth what is hidden beneath, we will continue to run this country the way we are running it right now.
You also had cause recently to say that you met who you call the turnaround guru at Arik, and you called his taking up the job. I think that the job was the poison chalice. Mm-hmm. Why is it poisoned?
I don't believe that Captain Roy Ilegbedu can turn Arik around. I think the problems with Arik are so endemic, and the owners of Arik themselves have no idea what they are dealing with. Amcon we are talking about. They have no idea what they are dealing with. So by asking Roy to come and take over this job, they haven't in effect given him the capacity to do the job because they don't know what the problem is. So how do you then, on what basis did you call Roy to say come and do this job? With all due respect to Roy, he was the boss man at Aero. Aero is a failed airline.
What was the reason they brought him forward?
Well, to be a turnaround, to turn it around. In one word, turn around. But how can he? Because they don't know what needs to be turned around. So you can't call him a turnaround expert just yet. You need to identify the problem, be sure that he's capable of delivering, and then let him do it. Then you call him a turnaround expert. You cannot call him a turnaround expert. The word expert is an operative word. You cannot call him a turnaround expert until he has proven to you and to me that he has the capacity or he has done it before. If he has, show me. You can't, because there isn't. He was running an airline that was a failed airline in the form of Aero. You then take him from Aero, you go make him the boss or the turnaround guru at Arik. I'm sorry, that's not a credential. You then take the guy who was at Arik and you take him to Aero. What are we doing here? Dominoes?
Oh, Mr. OMOKHODION, they're going to have you for breakfast.
They won't enjoy the breakfast.
Where do you stand on the matter of this national airline? I'll tell you why I'm asking. I recently interviewed Gabriel Gbenga Olowo, who is the president of Nigeria's Aviation Roundtable, and he spoke on the matter of national carriers as opposed to flag bearers. So let's just listen a little bit to him, and then we'll come back and continue the discussion. So what do you say to those who think that government has no business running a national airline? Where do you stand? Do you want a national carrier or do you support a flag bearer?
My stand has always been flag carriers. The experiment of the national carrier is archaic, is old, is no longer fashionable.
Why not?
Who is the national carrier of US? We have to compare apple with apple. I don't want Nigeria to compare with Ethiopia, for God's sake. We don't want to compare Nigeria with Ghana.
Yes, but
USA, Brazil, even UK. Who is the national carrier of UK? Our best friend.
Doesn't a national carrier enhance your tourism potential?
Negative.
What about
national
UAE?
carrier.
We've
National
seen
carrier.
Emirates and
You have
Etihad.
Emirates, Etihad, Qatar. Who is the national carrier? In UAE, Emirates, Qatar, Etihad. Which one is the national carrier? They are flag carriers. Flag. The airline that carry the flag.
So my question is, why do we need a national carrier, especially with our inability to manage one properly when we already have airlines flying our flags? He said we have Air Peace, it flies our flag. First Nation, there are a few of them like that flying the flag. Where do you stand?
All right, I'll answer that question like a lawyer in a long-winded way. I don't believe the federal government of Nigeria should be in the business of airline ownership. I believe their job should be singular, and that is to create an enabling environment. So the tax laws, the guarantees, the bank issues, they need to give us that. They need to give us deals, guarantees we can take abroad to borrow, to allow us fly into other countries, and to allow us do business on level playing ground. That's what the Nigerian government needs to be doing. They shouldn't be owning the airline. Why? Because when we have owned one as a country, Nigeria Airways, we've run into trouble. And people say the management of Nigeria Airways. Let me correct that straight up. Even when Nigerians were not managing Nigeria Airways, we had the boys from KLM. We gave a contract to KLM to come and run Nigeria Airways. We still ran it into the ground. Why? It belongs to the federal government. The federal government is in a position to tell you the president of the country is traveling to Congo tomorrow. That aeroplane that is supposed to go to London, put it in a position to take the president to Congo. And when he gets to Congo, the plane is staying there with him. This is a plane.
So passengers who have paid for tickets.
This is a plane that had a scheduled route. It was supposed to have been going to London, for example.
Yes.
And now it's sitting in Congo doing 0. And then the customers are complaining that there's no flight, there's cancellation, there's this and that. But nobody's able to tell them that Mr. President, who is a military man, has taken the plane and gone to park it in Congo. These are the issues that a lot of people don't know behind the scenes, you see.
Okay, so that brings me to the next point. If you say the government has no business running an airline, what about the UAE? We've seen Emirates, we've seen Etihad. Are we saying that they won't take a plane to another country and park it there?
You see, the thing with the guys at a place like Emirates is that they have so much capacity that they have planes that may just do presidential work. They have extra and surplus capacity to their normal regular flights that they lease out their aeroplanes to other airlines. They have knowledge of their demand, their peaks and their lows. They know when they can call an aircraft in and when they can bring it out of service.
So they won't disrupt normal services.
These guys are organized. We lack that kind of organization. What makes it worse, we've put people into managerial posts that have no managerial knowledge of capacity. So you have the traditional square peg and round hole. It's not going to work. It's not that Nigeria could not run a national airline. It's that our interests are so diverse. And if we use the way we run government, which is you must have this job because you're from the north or the south, then we're not putting the best men front. And when we don't do that, we're not going to get efficiency. And then we say management. I'm sorry, the choice of manager was federal government. So if there's a problem with the managerial capacity of Nigeria, the federal government must be held responsible because they tell you who should be director of marketing, director of sales. One must be Igbo, one. And I'm not going to go down that road, but it's not right. You cannot run an airline like that. The Arab boys that you've talked about, they don't do that. They throw the money in and they bring in the
professionals
from wherever run this airline. They've made a decision that in 20-25 years from now, when oil finishes in our country, the only thing we're going to have is to be a global player and use our aeroplanes to generate income. So they've gone in full force behind this. This is what we should be doing here. And I agree. I agree that we should have flag carriers and not a national airline. I have colleagues who disagree with me, but Air Peace has capacity. You have to wonder, though, that some of these airlines are one-man band.
What do you mean by that?
Well, one man owns the airline. The question then is, how deep are his pockets? Because it's an expensive business to run an airline. How deep are his pockets for expanding this airline? And before we even talk about expanding, we talk about maintaining the status quo. Talk less of expanding it. Has he got the money to do it? Has he got the money to carry the airline long enough, far enough for it to start producing? A lot don't. And that is why the airlines in Nigeria collapse. And that's why people say airline is a bad business. It's because we haven't decided how to aggregate, how to join together, how to consolidate our powers. You have $1 million, I have $1 million. You start your airline, I start my airline. Perhaps it would have been better if both of us started
merged and started.
But then egos come to play.
You want to be the CEO.
And I want to carry my girlfriend, and I don't want your girlfriend on board. And I use that example on purpose because it's a very Nigerian thing. And then we start having issues. You employ my brother, no, I want to employ my sister, no. And that's why they don't join together. If not, we could have a consolidated might. But the principle is good. The principle of if you can fund it, bring in your aeroplanes, we do the control, and we'll give you a route. You can go to, in the case of Air Peace, China, or in the case of Arik, go to London, or in the case of Medview, go to New York. I ask you to think, I ask your viewers to think. The position of Nigeria on the map of Africa is strategic. We're halfway between here and the United States, coming from Ethiopia. We're halfway from here going to the east. We can go to Dubai and onwards to Malaysia and onwards to China. We're virtually 6 hours from London. And we are 6 hours from South Africa. So if somebody is going to do a 12-hour flight from London to Johannesburg, we should be attracting that person and saying, look, 12 hours on an aeroplane? Too far. Come on one of our flights. Come to Lagos. Come and enjoy Lagos for half a day. We'll put you in a hotel. Come and see our flights. But Lagos is not a tourist country. So we can't attract those kind of people. We can't add value. That's why here we only sell tickets. Ticket London, Lagos, full stop. There's no added value. tourist destinations. We're not manufacturing anything. We're not bringing people here to come and buy our products. And so we only sell London, Lagos. But if we actually look at it, we can do more. And that kind of flexibility would be more appropriate to individual airlines as opposed to a flag carrier.
In other words, if I hear you correctly, without a thriving tourist industry, for instance, we have no business setting up a national airline.
No, I didn't exactly say that. I said we can add value to the business of selling tickets.
Right.
You see, if you think about it, if you think about a country like Senegal or Ivory Coast, they are big in the tourist industry. So why aren't we attracting the traffic that goes there direct?
Coming through Nigeria.
And spend a night here and spend 2 nights there or whatever the configuration.
Yes.
Why are we not positioning ourselves to be part of that market? We're not running down those economies, which is their fear about Nigeria. We're actually enhancing it. But we're simply saying, well, if you've done 3 nights there, come do 2 nights with us. We come dance Lagbaja together or whatever. You know, we make it part of the deal. We're not doing it.
Let me read to you something that the Airline Operators of Nigeria, AON, their chairman, Captain Noge Megison, who said that the Nigerian market is a high-risk market, yet the volume of business from Nigeria is quite modestly small. He was talking about airline brokers not paying their premium according to Lloyd's of London. Do you think the aviation industry here is attractive?
Look, we have one country, one geographical group of 200 million people. Even if you assume that only 50% of that number has the capacity to travel, I want you to compare it to a place like Zambia. I want you to compare it to a place like Ivory Coast, where their figures are under 70 million, of which they would have 50% capable. So without a Nigeria in any of the equations, we have zero. We are key. I think it's viable. I think we can do it. But I don't think we have started to do it. If I ask you right now, what are the tourist spots in Nigeria? Can you name me 3? And if you can, I assure you that the man down the road cannot. If you were to bring a foreigner to this country today, after the first night of drinking beers together, what is the next thing you'll be showing these tourists? Traffic? We're not ready for it. So we have the capacity, we haven't developed it, and because we haven't developed it, we're not earning as much as we should be. Because we're not earning that money, we're cutting corners on things like insurance and the premium. We're playing games, and we're playing games with people's lives. If one aircraft comes down, when you haven't paid the insurance, then it becomes a challenge to do the payouts you are supposed to do. It becomes English grammar. And if you look at the airlines when they've crashed, they end up tending to shut down. Why? They don't have the capacity. It shouldn't be on them. It should be on the insurance brokers. But those are not doing it. And when the insurance brokers take the premium, they should be reinsuring, preferably in foreign exchange. The question is, are they? Which is why I say probe Arik. When you probe Arik, all this will come into the wash. Did it have insurance? Who was insuring it? What was the insurance?
And this probe is not to be punitive. It's more exploratory, finding out facts that can guide us going forward.
Well, I don't mind it being punitive, but I don't mind it being punitive. But truth, you are right. Let us know the facts of the matter. Let it come out. Let us understand it clearly. Other people are running airlines. They're not shutting down. British Airways is flying. Air France is flying. United is flying. And people will tell me, yes, but those are airlines in Europe. I'm sorry. An airline is an airline. And if we want to play on the international stage, then we need to be matching those airlines. And that's what we should be looking at. We should be looking at their value systems. We shouldn't be underplaying, because we want to attract that same traffic, that same buying traffic. So that even if Nigeria is not working, even if Nigeria is dried out, if we have a true Pan-African airline, an airline that is doing what it says it will do, we should be living off the traveling public of the whole of the rest of the world. It shouldn't be dependent on whether it's Nigeria or not Nigeria. That's a secondary argument.
Join us again after the break.
Nice question.
Angela, that's a great question.
It's a good question.
It is difficult to respond to that question.
That is a serious question.
Angela, that is a very great question.
Great question, Angela.
You know, Angela, that's a very difficult question.
That's a great question, Angela.
Okay, that's a great question.
Angela, that's a tough one for me.
That's a good question. Good question.
60 Minutes with Angela. Again, answers to every question you always wanted to ask.
Welcome back. My concluding moments now with Anthony OMOKHODION. What value could a national airline bring for us beyond what I call bragging rights? You know, we have a national airline. What value does it bring? Especially if we don't have a thriving tourism industry. At least we know that Etihad and Emirates, one thing they achieve is that they ferry loads of people to the UAE for tourist purposes. Why do we need one?
All right, you hit the nail on the head by calling it bragging rights. Well, we want to brag. We want to brag. But true, an airline is the world's view of you. An airline represents how the world looks at you. An airline is an economic machine. If you think about it, you said to me at the beginning of this meeting that 2,000 people losing their job at Arik,
yes,
just because of what's going on, and that's why AMCON want to keep it alive.
Yes.
Well, if one airline is employing 2,000 people, how many airlines do we have in Nigeria? So all of a sudden, we're an economic powerhouse. An airline business is a village. In the airline business, one airline, Arik, they have engineers, they have doctors, they have cabin crew, they have pilots, they have
ground crew.
Yes, the infrastructure is massive. In a country like Nigeria that wants to employ and keep our youth out of unemployment, we need to be having those big industries that allow us to employ. So I said, maybe we have 10 airlines in this country. If each one is employing 2,000 people, that's 20,000 people you've taken off in one business.
Yes.
You see, and then there's the fringe businesses from that. Catering, cleaning of the aircraft, security, fuel suppliers, all of those people are employing their own staff. So when I say 10 airlines at 2,000 people each, and we're looking at the figure 20,000, we might actually be looking like something like 500,000 people in the airline business. I'm not even talking about FAN and National Maritime Agency. You know, by the time we finish, we'll find that, look, we really need to encourage the airline business. And if we do our work properly, think about it. Every pilot, A, needs to qualify, and then B, needs to remain current. We're sending these people abroad, and we're paying foreign exchange to keep them recurrent abroad. Why isn't that training done here? Cabin crew. You know, here's a glass of water, here's a glass of orange juice. We train them, and we keep them recurrent on type. So there's a cabin crew for a particular type of aeroplane because the doors are in different places, because the emergency systems are slow. And we train these ladies. But where do we send them for training? Why aren't we doing it here? Our aircraft, just like cars, they need to be maintained. A check, B check, C check, D check. All right, we can't do maybe heavy maintenance check. But simple, say, why are we taking the aeroplanes abroad? There are some checks we do here. But I'm simply saying, if we get it right, we are going to be like the Etihad. We are going to be saying to other countries, bring your
aircraft here. Have an industry.
And if we start like that, the next thing is we are going to be saying, all right, let's actually put this aeroplane together. Let's actually now be making an order from Boeing, massive order, and we say to Boeing, we'll spend this money with you over 10 years. But guess what the deal is? Half the assembly is done in Nigeria. All right, we can't do it today. But why aren't we thinking like that? Why aren't we thinking 20 years ahead, 50 years ahead, where we build that aircraft in Nigeria? Solar power is a big thing right now. We're talking about battery-powered flights. Why aren't we making the batteries here?
I've been wanting to speak with you about Brexit, you know, ever since that election. Did you think that the establishment were taken by surprise? Did the former Prime Minister, David Cameron, when he took that chance, they called it the greatest political gamble of his life, when he took that risk to drive political advantage, do you think he thought people would want to leave the EU?
I think we know now with certainty that even those people who voted out didn't know the magnitude of what they were voting for. So post the vote, all polls have shown that, oh, we really didn't know this was what it would mean.
The extent.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I don't think that even the Camerons thought that they could lose.
What is the reason why people didn't think of the extent?
They hadn't been properly informed. They didn't think the vote would come to that. And that is the problem. It was, I'll just vote. Yes. I'll just vote. And it surprised everybody when those I'll just vote actually outweighed those who thought, oh, we can't lose. That's what the shock factor was about. That the British people deserve to have their own laws. That the British people deserve to be able to not want foreigners into their country. That the British people deserve to have Europe subservient to Britain, as opposed to Britain being subservient to Europe, isn't wrong. That's an entitlement, and I will share that opinion.
Yes.
That we would go so far as to come out of Europe, Brexit, It's a shocker.
How do you manage the two? I mean, how do you say you want to remain in Europe, but yet you want to be independent? I know that for a long time, the United Kingdom maintained its pound sterling, for instance. The euro, they never adopted the euro as their own currency. And that arrangement seemed to work. But from what you're saying, how would Britain have been able to manage the two?
Well, you don't need to go too far. Let's look at Switzerland. If you ask the average refugee or immigrant,
yes,
they won't tell you they're going to Switzerland. They all want to come to England. And that's the trouble the English people have. Why is it England? And it was Germany, and it was Italy, and
yes,
it was France. And why England? Why is the end game England? Are we a soft touch? Is it because we are too nice?
Or because you speak English?
Well, what does that do for them? These are refugees. They've got into Europe. They've gotten in at Italy, stay in Italy, but no, we want to go to England. But these are non-English speaking people originally. So why England? And by this influx, there's a drainage. So England is right to say, hey,
enough.
Let's have a look.
Yes.
Now, I said to you, Switzerland. Why is it not it's Switzerland they want to go? And Switzerland didn't adopt the treaty, but they are still a part of the treaty.
Yes.
They have special status. And that is what England is saying. We'll have a special status. We'll negotiate with every country on an individual basis. It may be hard, but guess what? We want it that way. We want to be independent. We want to be Britain. Whether I agree with it or not, I don't. But that's me. That's me as an individual. But as a nation, I've got to agree that they have a point. They have a right to determine whether they want to be or not.
You don't think Britain will be operating from a weaker standpoint now?
I would answer you like this, and I would say we used to call Britain Great Britain.
Yes.
And I note you called it Britain.
Yes.
So, are we dropping the great? And is this going to be a prelude or an argument in favor of Britain becoming a weaker nation state?
Yes.
What happens with places like Scotland?
Yes, I was going to say, how does this Brexit vote, how does it affect Scotland? How does it affect Ireland?
Yes, or Wales. And there is an argument. The Scottish people are now talking about having a referendum, and they may walk. The Irish people are out. Northern Ireland may join. It's such murky waters. It's so untelling, and that is the trouble we are having. And that is what's happening to the currency, and that's what's making people afraid, because there's so much not knowing. There's so much uncertainty.
Yes.
And that is the question. It's really, really a difficult one.
With Theresa May winning that election in Parliament now, you know, the reason she did that was she wanted to be coming from a stronger standpoint.
Yes.
Now that it looks like her position is stronger going forward, does that mean that the British people are resigned?
Interesting word, resigned. Theresa May was Home Affairs Secretary, and under her there were some very harsh rules that were rolled out. Now, with this power you are talking about, that she has now acquired, or she will acquire after the elections, one wonders how draconian the laws are going to become. I haven't got any reason to think they're going to get any milder. At the very minimum, they will remain the same and probably even get worse. But she hasn't got an option. She's playing to the gallery. She's playing to mainstream England. And how the other countries will play will depend and can cause issues. Because if Scotland, for example, votes for they want out of the union, and then become an EEA state, if they do, then right on top of England would be a country that is a member of Europe. And then are we going to have borders with the Scottish people? And if that happens, then what happens in Wales? Are they going to also walk? And are we going to put borders there as well? And are we going to do a Donald Trump and put a wall? And there are issues here. There are serious issues. And I must say, I don't think anybody knows the answers, which is why the Daily Telegraph, the Guardian, the Financial Times, everybody who comments about this is in cloud blue. We don't know.
Uncertain. Is it true that some people will be able to retain their EU passports while giving up the British passports? Among those who voted to exit, who have now seen that, oh God, we miscalculated. What will happen? How will that work if I give up my British passport and decide I want to hold an EU passport? What will that mean in real terms?
All right, I don't think England, not in my knowledge, will say you give one for the other. England may say you can keep both. That would be my assessment of the situation. It's been like that with England. We've always been able to have 2 passports, 5 passports, whatever you're entitled to.
Yes.
If you're entitled to British, you get British, and if you're entitled to Nigerian, you get Nigerian. If the Nigerians will allow you. The problem was never Britain. So I don't think England will say it's Europe or us.
Yes.
You go get your European passport. I think what's going to happen though is that when you want to get your European passport, because you're already British, the laws may work against you.
How?
Well, the Europeans may simply say, you can't have a European passport.
Because you're not part of the
Because
EU.
you're not an EU member nation. Maybe they can say that. America, for example, we used to be able to travel, well, we still can go to America without getting a visa before we travel. But the Americans are now beginning to say, no, you're going to have to go and queue up at the embassy, like every other nation,
Yes.
and get a visa to come to the United States. Whereas America is supposed to be the closest friend of England.
Yes.
So if America is behaving like that, you then want to worry about the other nations that we're fighting against, fighting in quote. At this moment, again, it remains a very speculative arena. We don't have clarity about how it's going to go. There are talks about if this and if that, but we have to work with what we do know. And what we do know is that if you apply now, if you meet the criteria now, you will get the European passport. So as an immigration advisor, as a lawyer, I will be saying to people, sort this out and sort it out now.
Now.
Don't wait.
Don't wait. What does this Brexit mean for Nigeria especially? Will it be positive or negative?
Well, Brexit specifically for Nigeria means the English people are going to come to Nigeria and say, can we reach agreements?
On trade?
Yes.
It will be now one-on-one.
Yes. And this is where we require savvy Nigerians to be on the negotiating team. This is a chance to rewrite the books.
Right.
All the historical melodrama
Yes.
goes, and we look at it, what's good for Nigeria. The position Britain had of being captain of the road and telling us how it will be, that goes. Nigerians now stand up and say, what's best for Nigeria?
Yes.
If you want the cola nuts from here, if you want the cocoa from here, if you want the oil from here, guess what we want? And we don't want you to give us pennies. The processing, the manufacturing, bring it here.
Bring it here and train our people
Yes.
too. All right. So the loss of interest in trading with old allies in Africa can be traced back to 1973, the time of Ted Heath. Did direct trade not improve with the Lomé Convention, which is now updated into in the Cotonou Agreement and later called the Economic Partnership Agreement? Did direct trade improve or not?
I would say no. It's not been what I have seen. There's been a lot of talk, but I would say no. England, being Europe, was constrained by the requirements of the Union and spoke as a member of the Union. Very limited capacity to act independently and outside of Union agreements. From the Nigerian viewpoint, there's also the issue of as you said, the Lomé Convention and ECOWAS as a country, as a state of countries.
Yes.
So how we manage that relationship was not as symbiotic as we thought it would be. And I would say no. I would say maybe now it will work better for us.
We can rewrite the things. So now, in addition to trading directly with the United Kingdom, can we still trade as part of the economic blocs, like ECOWAS and SADC? Will we still be able to do that? And will we still be able to trade with the EU?
No reason why we shouldn't. What the SADC or the ECOWAS treaties will say would be interesting. Because if Britain approaches us and it contravenes any of those agreements, they have a right to scream and say, and let me just say, the ECOWAS countries, the SADC countries, the COMESA countries, all of them, the problem they have with us is that we're such a giant that they are scared when we breathe. So we have to placate them. We have to do everything to make them understand that, look, we are thinking Nigeria, but we're also thinking Africa. So if we use our might to say to England, we are buying, but you manufacture and you process here, they have a right to scream. And that is the problem. How do we do Nigeria?
Yes.
But not undo our neighbors and our friends? How do we not play bully? So sometimes there are some things that are not in the, when we analyze them, they don't make sense for Nigeria. But because of our other relations, simple things, electricity generation, we have to give to people like Burkina Faso and Mali.
Even though we don't have enough.
Well, I'm sorry. You took the waters of the Niger and the Benue and turned into Iteba and Kainji, and you are creating electricity, but you have disturbed their flow.
And
because you disturb their flow, there are international agreements in place.
So You know, people imagine that we're just being magnanimous, giving them electricity.
We are Nigerians. We try to pretend we are. But the facts are there are international agreements in place. These are landlocked countries. They are brother countries. They are neighboring countries. They haven't got access to the sea. And they need to get to the sea via us or via any of the other countries. So we have roads that are arterial that have to be good. Because if we mess the roads up, their products and their supply line is cut off. And if their supply line is cut off and they become a beggar nation, where are they going to go and beg?
Mr. OMOKHODION, thank you very much for coming on 60 Minutes with me today. And I'm sure I will forward all the reactions that I get from this interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching. I'm Angela Ajitumobi.